Good evening, everyone. This is the July 12th, 2023 meeting of the Durham Community Safety Wellness Task Force. We will officially get started in a few minutes. We are on the edge of being at quorum. We have a few that we know are about to log on. And we will get started officially in a few minutes. While we're waiting, we want to, of course, welcome all of you here who are members of the task force and supporters, all those who are interested in the subjects and the topics that we talk about with community safety and wellness. There's a lot going on in this task force. There have been a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions. We're really excited to be toward the end, what we feel is the end of our work, where we're trying to lock down all of our final proposals. Someone let me, okay, we are definitely at quorum now.
Yay!
So we can officially start. I'll pass it over to Marcia.
Okay, thanks. Yes, so good to be with you all. Last month, it's so good to have you back, Xavier, by the way. We missed you. And Isaac. It's so good to see you. The value that comes forth is responsibility. We have a huge responsibility that we've all been accepted for a number of years. And as we go into the last 4 months, I would just like to affirm the importance of that responsibility, that we provide recommendations that enhance the public safety and wellness, that rely on community-based prevention, intervention, and reentry services as alternatives to policing and the criminal legal system. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Xavier.
Thank you.
And agree, do we agree? I forgot to ask, do we all agree that responsibility is the value that will hold and direct and guide this meeting tonight? Good, okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to pretty much hand it over to Rose to drive the rest of the meeting. Before we do that, many of you may be on when to meet, doodle polls, it's a difficult time to get people together. I do want to just mention, just by way of announcement, that one of my assignments for the Crisis Response Roundtable was to kind of move forward the idea of a day center for residents who are underserved, unhoused, and so forth. Just want to let you know that I wasn't able to have any contact and meetings to move that forward until yesterday and today. I do want to mention that there are some grants that the city is looking at. Our housing, many of the housing authority, justice movement, a lot of people are meeting together, working on a couple of grants that are looking at what they're calling service delivery proposals, and they have been talking to community. So what I'm waiting on now is they're going to get me some data to show me what they've been hearing from the community. And once we get that, then I can help move that forward. So just want to let you know it's been difficult because it's vacation time, just trying to get people to sit down and talk about things. But I want to let you know that work is still happening. And with that, Rose, turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to start off with a quick reminder that our initial timeline for putting together a draft of the final report. I know obviously we're going to have a lot of recommendations we go through the night. I think there's going to be more recommendations that we go over in August. So things are still in flux, but if everyone, I know a couple roundtables have started working on their draft section. Now is the time to start thinking about making a plan, putting pen to paper, hands to keyboards to try and get some things together. We're going to be having conversations in the coming weeks about what the community engagement dissemination plan is going to be, if there's going to be a feedback period for members of the public to look at the report before it's finalized. So none of that stuff can happen if there's not, some words on papers. So if your roundtable hasn't been talking about that yet, now would be a good time to do so. And I guess maybe we can pause here before we go into all the recommendations, see if anyone else has any other announcements for the task force.
I can share just one thing so that it's on record. folks who have been watching closely may recall when we made the decision as a task force to begin a new roundtable committee that was focused on youth. And we made the decision recently to integrate that roundtable's work with another roundtable. And so what folks have known as the SRO roundtable and the youth focused roundtable have come together officially. And with our powers combined, very simply stated, we are the youth and schools roundtable. So you can put 2 and 2 together. We're focused on youth and schools as it relates to community safety and wellness. So just want to share that while we're on record, so that we're just remaining transparent about how this work remains dynamic and we figure out how to work together to get this work done and done well, done faithfully. So just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Jesse. Anybody else? All right, so by my count, I believe we have, let's see, let me make sure I'm not speaking out of turn. We're going to start with the second reading for the A&D proposal. The second reading for the Now Youth and School recommendations are going to be bumped in another month, so we won't be doing a second reading of those just yet. We also have 3 other first readings. So with the time I allocated about like 20 minutes for each. If one ends up needing to take a lot longer and others are shorter, you know, we can mix it up there. But I will give people just like a gentle nudge when it's been about 20 minutes of discussion, if it gets that far, just so we can keep ourselves on time. So I think, who did we say Marcia was going to present the updated A&D recommendation? And I can share that on my screen. You're muted, love.
Thank you. Thank you. Toya is our brain trust on this, but she's also very much under the weather. And thank you for being here. Toya, would you like for me to make some, they're just very slight changes. The only change that, Toya, would you like to make any comments or would you like for me to do it? You could just put it in the chat if that's okay. Okay, will do. Beautiful. The main change was really just an inclusion of talking about including what Jennifer had added about the difficulty of drug testing, making drug testing just another barrier to being a responsible adult. And so there you go. Jennifer, would you like to speak to that?
I like it.
Great. And so that was really the only major, I think another organization was added possibly. I'm sorry. That I'm not exactly sure. There was one other maybe point, I think, but that was the only change that we decided we did want to make, and it was made. And if anybody has any, here we go. Thanks, Toya. Making sure that parents have counsel at the beginning of onset of having DSS involvement. Thank you. Those were the 2 changes. And the rest is the same. And we unanimously approved it at the last task force meeting. Does anybody have any comments or questions or objections?
No, just thanks for popping that change in there. I appreciate it.
And we appreciate you
And
pointing
this is
that
still a
out.
really, really strong proposal. So yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool.
Marcia, did you say that this one was actually already voted on?
I mean, well, excuse me, we unanimously liked it. I mean, it seemed like that we were going to do it, except then Jennifer noticed that. And we said we would put that in and vote on it
Okay.
tonight. Thank you. I'm sorry. That wasn't clear or correct. So, Rose, would you like to call for a vote if you're happy to?
Yes, let's do that. I guess, do we need someone to call for a vote? Are we doing official rules of order?
I normally go through my attendance list base. I have a unofficial official form that I've been using, so I can do that.
Right.
I want to make sure that I'm clear on. We have Alejandra has not yet joined, has she?
No, she has not.
Nor Alec, nor Mike, nor Wanda. I think.
That's
No,
correct.
there should be 10 people, 10 voting members present.
Yep, that's what I've got. So if we're ready, I'll just go down my list for this proposal for the second reading. Start with Isaac,
Yes.
Jatoya,
She's going to do it in chat.
Yes.
Oh,
thank you. Bless you. Bless you, bless you. Jennifer,
Yes.
thank you. Jesse,
Yes.
thank you. Manju, Manju. We'll come back to her. Marsha,
yes.
Muffin,
Yes.
thank you. Samuel,
Yes.
thank you. Shanice,
Yes.
thank you. I vote yes as well. Manju,
Yes.
thank you. Oh, great. This proposal passes unanimously. Congratulations.
All
Back
right.
to you.
Very
Go ahead.
exciting. Okay, so the next one we'll go through is the bail bond recommendation. And I know Muffin's internet is a little bit spotty, but let's see how it goes and we can audible if we need to audible.
Okay.
And
So,
on my screen too.
so this is the bail bond recommendation from the community, from the criminal legal system roundtable, which includes myself, Marsha, Jatoya, and Mike. And so, did folks have a chance to read the recommendation? If not, I can go through like what a bond, the difference between a bail and a bond and secured and unsecured, things like that.
I did read through it, and Muffin, I know who you are and know how you show up and know the work you do, but I'm just mindful of folks who may have little to no understanding of who you are and the work you do. So just go ahead and just share it like someone hasn't heard it before, so that it's on the record, and I'm sure it'll answer questions that people might have.
Okay. And so basically we can explain the process of what happens when a person is arrested. Once they're arrested, and they go see a magistrate. The magistrate is essentially a judge, and the magistrate, which has little there's not a lot of oversight over the magistrates, but there is a bail schedule that they should go by. They don't always go by that bail schedule, but they do post what a bail should be for a person. It depends on circumstances that the officer says that the person was arrested, whether they were combative or whether they were compliant, and whether or not they have someone there to advocate for themselves. To advocate for them, or if they can advocate for themselves or not. Bail is set, whether it's a $50 bail up to $1 million bail. Bail is set, and the person either has to pay a bondsman 10%. And if they don't have the 10% to pay a bondsman, normally the bondsman can charge up to 15% if they have to make payments. in order for them to be bailed out. Once that bondsman is paid that percentage of that money, that person doesn't get that money back, even though they are free. That's money that they'll never see again. What the North Carolina Community Bail Fund does is the North Carolina Community Bail Fund pays the whole bail, and we can only do 2,000 or less. We pay the whole amount so we can get that money back and then use it to bail someone else out later. But it's easier for people to fight their cases from outside of jail than it is inside, because when they're outside, they can have contact with folks that, witnesses and things like that, that could possibly help their case as opposed to hinder it. A secured bond is a money bond. Sometimes they're unsecured. Unsecured is basically you sign your name on a dotted line and you're free to go. You don't have to put up any money. With an unsecured bond, that if you don't go to court, the money that you would have had to pay will be put on your credit. So let's say, I got a $3,000 bond. If I got an unsecured bond, I didn't have to pay a bondsman. I could sign myself out. If I don't go to court and I get a failure to appear, that $3,000 will go on my credit. If I paid a bondsman, the bondsman would possibly send a bounty hunter to come get me because they will be responsible for having to pay that whole $3,000 to the court system. And it's supposed to help with the schools and things like that. Normally, when a person is arrested, they have to see a judge within 48 hours. So that means if they're arrested on Friday, they'll be seeing a judge on Monday morning who can assess whether the bond can be unsecured, raised, lowered. Any one of those things would happen in first appearance. If there's a holiday, they do have court still, jail, they call it jail court, but they will have court for someone if it's a holiday, and that holiday would take them past that 48 hours. They will see a judge in those 48 hours. If you don't make bail at all, you sit up in the jail and you have to wait for your next court date. After being incarcerated for 15 days, your attorney can request another bond hearing to see about possibly getting your bond reduced or unsecured. Some attorneys do that, some attorneys don't. Yeah, are there any questions so far? In North Carolina, we really could end money bail altogether because we have a good statute. The statute says that the magistrates are supposed to go to unsecured bonds first, but they don't. They go to money bonds first. But unsecured bonds first, being released into a person's custody or organizational custody, or when I say organizational custody, if a person has mental health issues, they can go to a mental health facility. Or even a nonprofit could have someone released into their custody, or an individual person, a parent, a sibling, a loved one could have someone released into their custody too, as opposed to having to pay a bondsman or ask the bail fund to bail someone out. Those are the options that they have, but it's very rare that the magistrate uses those. They go to money bail first, and then they go to unsecured, and then they go to, signing someone out and releasing them to someone's custody. So they do it in reverse. I think that's it.
So I guess at this point, we can open the floor for any questions or concerns about this proposal. I'll scroll through it a little bit more. For those watching, I update the task force website with these materials. The update back end of the server was not working yesterday, but I just got them online. So any members of the public can go to the task force website to find any of the recommendations that we're reviewing today.
I appreciate you saying that. I was gonna ask you about that, Rose. If you could you scroll to the area where those 7 recommended steps are? Just kind of hold there.
Yes.
Thank you. For those who are watching.
So any thoughts, positive or negative, about this particular proposal? This is a first reading.
I just would really just want to mention how what a great job this proposal does as far as the narrative around the impact of length of stay, which is not always the narrative in the public when we talk about bails and so forth. And so just showing the data behind the connection between bail, the amount of bail, length of stay, I think is really important that the average person, average resident cares about these things, really understands. So I really appreciate the narrative here and the data to support the recommendation.
Can I ask one question? Okay, Xavier?
Yeah, go for it.
Muffin, Rose, can you show the screen again of the recommendations? It's been a while since I followed this stuff. I just wanted to make sure. So number 2, it says that it's the senior superior court judge that's in charge of the magistrates. And I just wanted to make sure that's right. I thought it was the chief district court judge, but again, this has been a few years since I've been involved in this work. So yeah, Muffin, you're the one who's closest to this. I was just wanting to make sure that that's right.
I know that as a member of that roundtable and our discussions, this is the information we received. I think the chief district court judges also has responsibilities too over that, but so we'll look into that. We'll double check that, because I remember also hearing that it's the chief district court judge who has also responsibility over the supervision or of the magistrates. Okay, thank you for that. And at the end, I encourage people to read all the way to the end, because there are examples of states across this country who have ended cash bail and had either better results as far as appearances, remembering that bail and bail bond is just an assurance to show up in court, and the elimination of bail bonds have either a greater effect on people showing up or very little to none. So the idea that we have to tax, in a way, it's a tax on low income people, because if you have money, you never see the inside of a jail. You post your money and you're free. So the inequality of that, the inequity that's inherent in this process. And I think it's also very, very important to look at the North Carolina Task Force on Racial Equity and Criminal Justice, who also recommends bail bond reform, and we support that as well. And that too is to eliminate cash bail for certain classes of offenses, but we would recommend. We certainly agree with that. It's a very good report. I hope everybody takes the time to study it. because being in jail, even for a few days, is incredibly disruptive to one's life. Had a friend who lost his job because he didn't show up for work, then lost his apartment and his car, and it just, it was like a waterfall of just disasters based on an incarceration of only a few days. And he was innocent. His case was immediately dismissed once it was in front of a judge. So it was just, I think people just really need to understand how disruptive and punitive it can be to even spend a few days or a day in the county jail.
And Samuel asked in chat if they still have 23-hour lockdown in Durham County. And Muffin replied, yes. And I believe there may be a future recommendation on that specific topic. And just noting Samuel and others talking about the inhumanity of that policy in the chat. Any other comments on this particular proposal? Otherwise, we may be moving right along in this today. And we can go on to the next one.
I think I just want to name that, like, when folks are losing their jobs, struggling around childcare, becoming at risk of eviction, that actually increases the likelihood of what's being classified as crime in our community. Like, there's a way that this is a cycle that we really urgently need to break. And I want to thank the team that is bringing a proposal to push where we can to stop that cycle.
Agreed.
All right, I think we'll see this proposal again next month then for a second reading. If you have any other feedback in the meantime, reach out to the members of the Criminal Legal Roundtable. And the next reading comes from the Crisis Response Roundtable, the next two first readings, but I know it was a collaboration of people across the task force. So I'm not sure if Jennifer or Marcia, which one of you want to present either one, if you want to start with harm reduction or you want to start with naloxone, and let me know if you want me to share my screen on either.
Marcia, do you have any thoughts?
For you to present, please.
Sure.
I've learned so much. Thanks for all the work you did on this.
Sure. So I do have to tell you, I managed to grab my phone and computer, but not my power cord when I ran down here. So there is a small but higher than 0% chance that I will disappear until we can get back upstairs. But I have 10% left, so it should be okay. So I think the most straightforward one is the naloxone one to talk about. I wanted to mention also, just for the sake of completeness, there was an attachment that got lost somewhere along the way, probably leaving my inbox, that was meant to accompany that proposal. I've tossed it in the chat. Here, I can toss it. Can I do it publicly? I can't do it publicly. Well, it's in the chat, but it's on the National Association of Counties website. It's a brief just with like basic information about naloxone and its utility in overdose prevention. Rose, thank you. Whatever she gets paid, it should be more. That's my next recommendation. Okay. So in brief, Marcia raised this idea a while back. I forget the specific origin story of your inspiration, Marcia, but the idea was to make sure that at a minimum, all municipal employees are prepared with like basic education about overdose identification, response, and are equipped with the tools that they need to respond effectively to reverse overdose. I want to clarify that, like, just like all police departments and fire departments and libraries where this is equipped, this is not a mandate to employees to provide a particular kind of response. The goal is to equip people to respond if they feel so moved to do so. What are the highlights here? So very briefly, for anyone who is not familiar, naloxone is a medication that has, there's some trauma docs that get mad at me when I say this, but I think it's fair to say pretty much zero effect on the human body, except to block the effect of opioids. And so it's used as a really effective antidote to opioid overdose. It brings someone out of that incapacitated state where they're basically suffocating to death very, very quickly, and it saves a lot of lives. It's an evidence-based overdose prevention strategy. It has recently been much more widely available to the community thanks to changing federal rules and state rules, both that expand access. And in a few months, I was about to say weeks, but I think in a few months, there's one of the commercial sort of like available naloxone brands is going to be available over the counter. So the goal for this proposal is to do two things. One is to institute a training for all municipal employees in order to teach them how to identify an overdose and how to administer naloxone if they feel compelled to do so, safe to do so in the situation. I've done naloxone trainings for like the last decade. They're very straightforward. They can take 3 to 4 hours if you've got really interesting people with a lot of questions, and they can take 20 minutes if you just want to like get through and make sure that everyone has exactly what they need. We're proposing that the city contract with North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition, which already does these trainings all over the place, including they have historically done so in our jail. They have historically done so in so many community groups for free. We should be paying them for those services that we already rely on, and having a sort of like series of one-time trainings for people who are already employees. And then we proposed, and while we know this is an ask because it's already really tight, we proposed finding 15 to 20 minutes in the schedule for new employee orientations, which happen twice a month, both at the city and the county. And there's a huge block of time in those agendas where they just go over all these sort of policies that are related to, you know, like the drug testing policy and so on and so forth. And so we believe that there's opportunity to do that. North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition is extremely willing and able to provide trainings on that schedule, and got really excited when we mentioned paying them for it. So they were willing to do it for free. We should not do that. We should pay them for their services. The second part of the proposal involves making naloxone available to all municipal employees. We went back and forth a lot and edited this document a lot, trying to discern the most effective way to do that. And we came up with this. There is already a really, really good standard for making emergency medical equipment available to people in a professional environment, and that's AEDs, automatic external defibrillators. The American Heart Association has a standard that every person should be, it's that an AED should be no more than 3 minutes away. And that means like a 1.5 minute brisk walk to get it, 1.5 minute brisk walk back. Very, very likely we have AEDs already in most of our municipal facilities, especially if there's office buildings, libraries, things like that. So those devices can literally just be doubled up. You can plop in a naloxone kit and there and be done. We also have municipal employees who work out in the community. And so these are folks that we can follow other models. Like, for example, I believe our police officers currently carry naloxone, if I'm not mistaken. You know, the example that we use in the proposal is they certainly don't all run on every day, but there's 78 sanitation trucks in the city. And while there's a lot of people that staff those trucks, that's really only 78 first aid kits, right? That you need to put, or probably less, that you need to put a naloxone kit on every given day. So this is ultimately, these are details that need to be sorted out by each individual department. It doesn't seem like a very heavy lift, but that's what we're asking. So the proposal then would be to obtain naloxone for those groups in order to make it available by those standards. We don't have to have a kit for every single person. That's expensive and really unnecessary. There just needs to be one available. And then to continue to replenish those kits as they get used or lost or damaged or expire. They tend to have an expiry of about 3 to 4 years at this point. There are 2 versions of naloxone that are available currently. One is intramuscular or injectable naloxone, and one is the nasal kind. It looks like a little Afrin bottle, right? A lot of people are more comfortable with the nasal But because we live under capitalism, that version costs more than 10 times more than the injectable version. And there's a figure that was actually put together by some colleagues at UNC at the end of the proposal that shows that almost 90% of the cost that's paid for that commercially is profit. It still takes just a couple of bucks. Right now, the special price that Bioemergent Solutions, the people that make that nasal version, it's the brand name Narcan. So they make the nasal Narcan. It's about $50 per kit. The injectable, which the public health department already procures for certain reasons, and that can be as little as like $7 a kit, depending on what you put in it and what you make available. But the doses themselves are like $3 or $4 a pop. They're $150 a pop at cost. So we are really strongly recommending that the city and the county consider using intramuscular naloxone whenever it's possible. There's no medical, chemical liability, logistical reason not to use it. It just costs a fraction of what the other one costs, and that's why we encourage it. So yeah, I think that's it. So train everybody now, train everyone as they come in, get everyone naloxone now, and then just maintain that as it goes on.
Jennifer, would you also just orient us to the problem? Yes. Thank
Yes.
you.
So we have been in this thing that I don't like calling a crisis, because that can be a sort of problematic term. But we have been calling it a crisis, or has been a national emergency for a very, very long time. A lot of this goes back to, I know we had problems with diverted pharmaceuticals before this. We had issues that we needed to respond to. But if you look at the CDC graphs of overdoses, not from prescription opioids, but from heroin, after 2010, it's like at a right angle, and the reason is because we reformulated OxyContin and took Safe Supply essentially out of the equation. Using diverted opioids was not risk-free. A lot of people were being harmed, but it was nothing compared to an illicit, unregulated, unpredictable, constantly fluctuating opioid supply, which began as heroin and then now has become fentanyl and is now becoming fentanyl mixed with xylazine. So as a result, even though I know we have a lot of sort of intellectual and compassion fatigue around this, the numbers in Durham, or across the country really, but in Durham also have been climbing a lot. So even though we have been in crisis mode for more than a decade, the rate of fatal overdose in our county has doubled in the last few years. We don't have total counts for 2022 yet, because public health is very slow. We will probably get a finalized number of this is how many fatal, non-fatal overdoses we had in the year 2022 around Christmas, if we're lucky. It's always the Christmas present. Last year's public health data comes out. But we know that from 2019 to 2020 to 2021, we had an almost doubling. The numbers are in the proposal, but if I remember correctly, we went from 48 fatalities in 2019 to 108 in 2021, and there's no reason to believe that that is not continuing to climb. There's a lot of reasons. COVID really threw everyone for a loop in a lot of ways that we know about, and a lot of ways that we're still learning about. But yeah, people are dying a lot, and the drug supply is only becoming more and more unpredictable, which just means that the chance for a fatal accident is higher than it's ever been.
So for very little investment, we could save lives. And it's a no-brainer, right? Thank you. I'm a little worried about your battery. You want to shouldn't we hear from her for the next one, and then we can ask questions?
I'm okay for now.
Okay.
I'm happy to keep talking, but I'm conscious of how much space I'm taking up. So if there's other comments that folks have to make, I would love to pause.
Manju, go for it.
Who would be the point within the city who are who would be tracking, making sure these kits are where they should be, keeping a tab on when these expirations happen and replacing them, like what would that coordination look like, and what would the role of Harm Reduction Coalition be? Like just trainers, or are they also doing some of the implementation labor?
So we left some of that stuff unspecified in the proposal, mostly because the logic that was brought to the written proposal, at least, and if there's more information, obviously we can change it, was just that was a determination sort of best made by city council, city managers, of like who to delegate that particular task to, or how to organize those sorts of things, and also how to, keep their own records, do their own procurement, things of that nature. The role that is proposed for the Harm Reduction Coalition is simply to contract to do the trainings.
That all sounds great. And you're right, we don't need to get into the weeds. I trust that our city.
Yeah, I could name someone, but they'd probably never talk to me again.
And we're
Be like,
talking
I
about
propose that this person get another line on their job description.
We're talking about city, but is there also some county element here? Or are we
Yeah,
talking
the
about
proposal
both?
is for both city and county. I attempted to use the word municipal to kind of capture them both as much as possible. If I defaulted to city, that's just because I'm tired. It should be both city and county.
So that would be the amendment. I would say, let's be explicit city and county so that it's clear that we're asking our county commissioners to support this proposal. How is it looking in the schools, Jennifer? Does it make sense for this also to be a conversation with school board?
We had a conversation about, and forgive me, I think Xavier or someone else knowledgeable actually sufficiently answered my question, but I didn't retain it. Of like, when we say all city county employees, does that include school district employees? Xavier, can you recall what wisdom you shed on us last time we talked about this?
I don't recall that conversation. I will say this.
I just remember you knowing things.
The only, school staff do not consider themselves county employees. There is a separate benefits package and so forth. Although there's a lot of local funding from the county into the Board of Education's budget. They are really state employees, so that would be a separate conversation. So they would not be included in this proposal as it is now.
Mm-hmm. I know from secondhand conversations, and I have not independently verified this, that there are other folks in the area who are interested in getting naloxone into schools. And it has been reported to me that there has been a bit of hesitation to do that, that perhaps, if I heard correctly, I want to emphasize this secondhand, but if I heard correctly, the part of the feedback was we can't do that because we don't have enough full-time nurses on staff to administer naloxone, which basically just had me being like, why do they think a nurse needs to administer naloxone? A 5-year-old can do it, and why don't they have nurses? Which is a different conversation. But yeah. Jesse?
I just messaged you. I was just like, anyway, my revision suggestion is super minimal. It's just that I know the city of Durham refers to our folks as the Durham Community Safety Department, DCSD, and you call it the Department of Community Safety, DCS. And this tomato, like, I know exactly what you mean. It's not that big of a deal. Just so that the language is consistent. It's something I know.
Yeah.
I was saying CSD, and
I've
you're
seen them all
saying
in circulation.
DCS, and the website says DCSD. So I'm just trying to name that. That's all.
Thank you.
By and
Yeah, I
large,
was actually not
I'm-
sure which one was the official one, so thank you. Yeah.
DCSD is what's on the website, and in some ways I appreciate that. Like, what I like about that, even though it is in the city, like, I know the reference of the word community sort of allows it in my mind to, like, I can imagine it being something that ends up being not solely within the city, but shared, across municipalities, if that ends up happening one day. So we'll see. But it makes sense to me that it's described the way it is, but that's neither here nor there. You hear what I'm saying? Thank you.
Not seeing any other comments on this one, but I'll pause for another second.
I have one random question. I'm just curious to hear a little bit about what your conversation was like with the Durham Community Safety Department. I feel like we sing their praises often, and I know they're doing a lot of important work. And with the expected expansion, it's kind of, I won't say unclear per se, but it kind of remains to be seen, like what it will look like once, you know, they've hired more people and they're doing more. And I know you mentioned, but I know it's mentioned in the proposal that you all were able to consult with Ryan and other staff within the, see, I'm trying to work on it myself, with the Durham Community Safety Department, and that they were super interested in, you know, incorporating this or including it as they're able to. So I'm just curious if there's any language you would offer about like how that went and anything in particular that they might have said that spoke to their interest in supporting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spoke to Ryan and some Heart folks about both proposals. In general, the naloxone training and availability proposal was just like, yes, we should already be doing that. It was just blanket support. The department isn't directly involved in that, other than the fact that they are a department of municipal employees and would thus, be, if most of them probably could do the naloxone training, but there would be efforts to make sure that they had that information. For the second proposal, which we haven't discussed yet,
Yeah,
I didn't necessarily.
I messed up, pardon me.
Oh, no,
Keep going
that's
now.
okay. I can answer your question super quickly. It's that I didn't have Heart in the proposal originally, and I added Heart to the proposal because they asked us to. They had a specific vision. They had already discussed that vision with the North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition. And Ryan specifically was like, talk to this staff person because they're the one who's also growing the vision. And I spent like an hour on the phone with that individual. And so essentially everything that reflects the department in that proposal, in the second proposal, is my best effort at just in an unadulterated way transferring what they told me and what they want to do to the page.
Thank you for speaking to me and my accidental ahead of selfness. I was looking at the wrong proposal. The one question or at least comment that I had, I've actually connected with the county. Has a new department that's essentially focused on DEI work. And so they've hired a director of equitable well-being. And I know that he is liaising closely with human resources. His name is Brent Lewis. I've gotten time with him in person multiple times. He's only been here for like a month. But he seems really brilliant and has the right posture, willing to learn and figure out how to, contribute meaningfully within the work of the county. So just giving him a shout out. Hey, and also just putting them on your radar in case there's something that we don't know that they may know. I know I wanted to mention that when you listed human resources as a particular point of connection. I was looking, like I said, I was looking at the wrong proposal. That was on me. So my 2 cents and then some, probably like 5 cents. I said my nickel. I'll be quiet.
If there's nothing else, that seems like a decent segue into the next recommendation. which is also related to the opioid crisis. So Jen, why don't you go ahead and take that one away?
Yeah, and this was a proposal that I was asked to produce by our task force leadership, and I was very happy to oblige. So there's a few different parts in this. I'm going to, I think, just explain like super high level what we're proposing, and then I'm happy to like go into detail and answer any questions. But we want to direct funds that are available, that may be task force funds, that may be opioid funds. We have a lot of opioid funds coming into the city and the county, and really encourage our city and county leadership, as they feel appropriate, to direct that money into expanding harm reduction services. These are all services that are evidence-based, that are allowable under the opioid settlement, already have a basis for provision. We have like community groups that are doing it. We have HEART as a sort of like backup and bridge to, so like the infrastructure is there. We just need the funding to start flowing so we can stop doing this work out of a minivan and store all of this stuff somewhere besides my back porch. So we want to make this into like a real thing, right? So just the snacks and the socks and the tampons are on my back porch. The actual supplies are somewhere else. So we're proposing a few things. One is to purchase a FTIR, or a Fourier Transform Infrared Spectrometer, which is an extremely cool device, which I will explain only if asked, because I will just not stop talking about it. But essentially, it's a portable spectrometer that gives insight into what is in drugs. Again, this is evidence-based. We know that this is helping improve knowledge of the drug supply. It helps individuals who bring samples to be tested to make better decisions, safer decisions, different decisions, mountains and mountains of evidence. There is already, to my knowledge, good interest in purchasing one of these. Gudrun Parmer, in one of her like last acts as a director of the I'm going to get it slightly wrong, the Judicial Resource Center. She did a great job directing that. But in one of her last acts, she presented some of the findings from research that she had done into community perspectives and evidence-based strategies to respond to overdose locally to the county commissioners. And she really, really strongly advocated for getting one of these machines. So we propose that the county, probably because they have more opioid settlement money, purchase one of these machines and just give it to the North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition. We also, Shani says, I witnessed the HEART team give out Narcan to the community in the village and show them how to use it. Yeah, they're awesome. That's what they want to do more. So we want to buy the FTIR, give the FTIR to NCHRC, but we need NCHRC to have a place. Sorry, that's North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition. They've been serving the community for ages. We want to give them the space to actually house and use that device. You cannot pop that sucker into the cigarette lighter and do it on the front of a minivan. Like, they need a space, right? So we're proposing that a couple of things. One, money be directed towards a modest mobile medical unit. Like, they don't need all kinds of like IVs and oxygenate. They need like a power strip and Wi-Fi and a place to do some consultations and maybe have a bit of air conditioning and store stuff there. We're recommending that that there be money directed so that they could have a storefront. They currently do not have any kind of brick and mortar. And I realized I actually needed to make an edit to the proposal. It says the only place where they do trainings inside four walls is in the jail, and they haven't actually been able to do that for many years. So it's all happening out of this very well-loved minivan. We are proposing that they receive funds for additional staff training, specifically staff with chemistry background. We have, between myself, Dr. Nabdas Gupta at the Injury Prevention Center, or Injury Prevention Research Center at UNC, and several other people in the state, we have gobs of experience doing and watching these programs be set up. And so the budgets that we propose to do that are based on multiple iterations of doing this both inside and outside of North Carolina. And we are proposing also that a bit of money be directed towards just supplies, because one of the things that all harm reduction groups struggle with is the fact that The new term of art in public health for these programs is syringe service programs, because the sort of like anchor, right? The like Harris Teeter in the middle of the shopping center is syringe distribution. And that is still not allowable, not an allowable expense with federal funds. So that's one of the most sort of like restrictive and demanding expenses that they have. And we did the math and they only spend like $30,000 on that a year. So just throwing them a few 10 grand, $40,000, $50,000 a year for these supplies will free them up financially so much to be able to bend and flex as they are implementing these new programs and new needs arise. The second part of the proposal is that we are asking for funds be directed to HART so that they can also obtain those supplies. HART wants to register with the state as a officially operating syringe services program. I am not a lawyer, but many of us have looked at the regulations, and I believe some city attorneys have looked at it, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, it's kind of a broad consensus that there's nothing stopping a city department from registering as an SSP. It's been done at the county level before now. And what they want to be able to do is to provide the full complement of harm reduction services, save maybe the FTIR, whenever they go out for a call for service. So they don't want to be like, oh, you're someone who would really benefit from some wound care supplies and some naloxone and maybe some like safer use supplies. Here's a number, call Lofton. He's really nice. He'll be on this corner next to it. They want to be able to provide those supplies right then and think of it as like a bridging supply, right? So they're going to give folks what they need to get through the next days, weeks, and then refer them out to the community-based organization, which is NCHRC, for ongoing services. And that addition was included at the request of HART specifically. So that's mostly it. Jesse's had his hand up for a second. I'm interested to hear what he has to say.
I'm pressing all these buttons because I have the touch screen. Lower hand. Okay. No, it was just to, in some ways, piggyback, even that's like one of my least favorite phrases, to piggyback off what Shanice was saying around witnessing the HART team. I don't know if everyone here has been able to do a ride along with them. I'm sure crisis response folks probably have, but just for others, I was able to do that recently. And yeah, it just gave so much more dimension and context to what I already knew to be true, but it was just great to be able to see it in real time. And encourage everyone who's on the task force to make space for that as they're able. Because again, I just think it's important. And I think everything that you're presenting here kind of speaks to the important work that they're doing. And again, like I said before, I'm just excited to see what their expanded work actually starts to look like in real time, with widened hours and more funds and more staff on board. So, okay. Shanice is the only one from the roundtable that has done a HART ride along. Yay. So yeah, as you're able, go for it. It was cute when I was walking up to City Hall and they had gotten a call. And so they zipped around. They're like, are you ready? Get it in and get on in. And so I was like, oh, okay, here goes. So yeah, it was great. I always forget their names, but I remember their bird names. I had Hawk and Heron. So shout out to them. I think his name was Ricky. And I wish I could remember her name. Anyway, yes. Well, that's a good question, Samuel. I wonder if there is an age minimum. I feel like my understanding was that because we are on the task force, there's not something that they make available to just regular schmegular community members. So my sense is that your age probably wouldn't be an issue because you are a task force member. That's what would make you qualified for the experience. That's my 2 cents. Cool beans indeed.
Wow, I can't wait to get my Schmegular resident t-shirt. when this is over. Just want to say on the larger scale, there are a lot of things that in our county, our city, where going back to mention some things I mentioned earlier, top of the meeting, service delivery, you know, and taking us out of silos when it comes to government and community services. This is just another example of that. I love that aspect of this proposal, where when the need's identified, can someone handle it then? And so those conversations are still ongoing. This is a much larger peg to that conversation, especially because HART didn't exist over a year ago, right? You know, so having, and they're willing to do this work. So I love that aspect of just really focusing on service delivery, whether we're talking about health, public health, education, housing, just trying to really give residents, I don't know if we keep saying, use this term all the time, one-stop shops, but just not having us residents run around the county to get served, to be served. So I just really appreciate the big picture collaboration that's embedded in this recommendation.
Manju?
Can you point out to me how Durham County would be involved, please? I didn't fully.
Yes. So at the recommendation of Nidhi Sachdeva, who is currently the opioid liaison whisperer at the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, we left the details of the financial arrangements sort of vague. She's consulting with a bunch of different counties about how to do this. And so her specific recommendation was like, let them figure out if it's going to be a grant, let them figure out if it's going to be reimbursement, just like do that later under negotiation. That should be negotiated between the city and our county and in CHRC or in the city's case with HART. But the difference is that the city is getting like 6 to 7 figure numbers of opioid money every year, and the county is getting 7 to 8 figure numbers of opioid money every year. And so primarily the body that would be spending opioid settlement money would be the county. So we can absolutely change it. I was kind of at a certain, sometimes with these things, I'm just like putting words on paper because we need a complete sentence. So if we have insight to bring to it to make it more like appropriate or successful, I very much welcome that. But the choice that was made in the first drafting was just, let's leave that very vague, and let's let the sort of like conversations that are already happening about how that sort of division of opioid money labor is going to be split between the county and the city, to sort of let them figure that out. But I think the implicit assumption, and if it feels necessary, we can explicitly say this in the proposal, like the vast majority of this money should probably be coming from the county because they're receiving the vast majority of this money.
May I
I
add?
agree that the majority
Okay.
of the money should be coming from the county, and I guess I'm wondering if we might want to also include some guidance to the county. Maybe there's specific things that the county's already doing that we're excited about on a harm reduction tip. We want to affirm, and I'm curious if there's just so
Yeah.
many clinics that the county operates, places that are like touch points for a lot of community members who would benefit from what's being offered here. And I'm just wondering if some of these elements could be more explicitly offered in the proposal, as like, we're asking that Durham County make harm reduction available to county residents in these ways,
Yeah.
in these spaces.
So off the top of my head, I know that there's been just like a lot of engagement, not just with community members, but with like subject matter experts and people doing the work around how to spend the opioid settlement money. I will be honest, I was completely blown away that we had county leaders who had both heard of and were excited about getting an FTIR before like someone like Lofton or Lauren Brinkley or myself had talked to them. I was just like, so they're obviously listening and getting good advice and absorbing it. They've also, there's just, I can't speak to the progress because I'm not personally involved, but I can tell you that there's like a lot of professional and emotional energy being put into getting the Durham County Detention Center operating like an OTP, an opioid treatment program, which is like the draconian federal regulations and registration that you have to have in order to distribute methadone, because we should be distributing methadone to people on that medication in jail the same way that we let people have their insulin and their asthma medication and all of that. So there are things happening at the county level that are quite good and could be lifted up as well. Yeah. And I would welcome any input you have about like the sort of clinics that you're talking about. That's ever so slightly outside of my radar. So I would love to learn more about that so we can include it.
And I
wonder
would-
if there's people with more expertise who we could have like a next layer of conversations with about this element around Durham County, what the ask would be around expanding harm reduction access through Durham County services and spaces. Like how dope would it be if when you walked into Durham County Health Department, I mean, not the health department, the social services building, which I mean, just so many humans pass through that building on a regular basis because so much of what we access, food stamps, WIC, like everything, you just go to that building to like get stuff stamped. And
Yeah, I agree. I think my one hesitation, and I'm not speaking with like specific knowledge about Durham departments or employees, just broadly, is that a lot of those efforts to integrate, access to harm reduction supplies, things like that, into existing county health and social services departments turn out really poor, because like stigma runs super, super deep. There's a lot of like folks who are like not comfortable, don't feel like that's the work they got into this to do. There tend to be much more regulated. They tend to be more like 1-for-1, or have like restrictions, like higher barrier to access. That doesn't mean that
That's the
there's
sense I
not a
get, too.
possibility to do it well, but yeah.
And I think there's also folks in Durham County
Uh-huh.
in those service spaces who are trying to do something different. And maybe that's our first
Okay.
round of next conversations, is like asking them, what changes would you like to see?
Yeah.
But overall, this looks like an amazing proposal.
Yeah.
And
No, yeah.
I'll-
I want to tap the Manju Brain Trust about those people, please. Can we put that on our next roundtable agenda? Yeah.
I would say that there at the May 1st county commissioner meeting, you can access it through the website. Gudrun Palmer at about, it was, I want to say 4 hours in to that meeting, made and had a great PowerPoint presentation. So it was to all the commissioners, and it's interesting. So she, as director of what is now called the Justice Services Department, used to be the Criminal Justice Resource Center, laid it out, and we really pulled from that, because it's a lot of money, y'all, and to be able to have drug checking and to have it be within the harm reduction coalition where people know each other and can tell each other. So if there's bad drugs, think how many lives that can save. I would encourage people to do that. It's a 20-minute PowerPoint presentation, the May 1st County Commissioners meeting. And it's great. And we need to all thank Gudrun Palmer for her leadership. She made those connections, and we can all miss her very much.
Yeah, and if y'all are interested in the opioid payments, there's a dashboard, but it's like it gives you indications. All counties are getting money, some large cities are getting money, including Durham, and it shows the schedule of those payments over the next forever. It goes into like at least 2039 or something like that. Yeah. So there's like huge chunks at the beginning, and then sort of like it trails off a little bit. It can be fun to kind of poke around. You can look at it at the state level, county level, however you want. Thanks, Rose.
Any other thoughts or questions about this proposal or any of the proposals we talked about today? All right, then we are on track to have a number of second readings next month and a number of first readings next month. So the time to discuss proposals will probably get even shorter next month. So if you do have time before the next meeting to read through proposals, so we can focus time on discussion as opposed to explanation, I think that will help us quite a bit, but we'll see how things shape out over the next month. And I'll pass it back to Xavier and Marcia.
It's all yours, Marcia.
Well, we're on time, y'all. We may even get out a little early. Yay! So, as we always do, first, let me say thank you. It is always a joy to be with you all. You give me hope and inspiration. And as we depart, if you'd like to add in, if you'd like to put in the chat, what are you leaving with tonight as we exit this time together? And I will read them out. I am definitely bringing gratitude. Or you can just say it. You don't have to type it. We can actually inspiration, hope, light, momentum. Yeah. Community, gratitude, groundedness. Beautiful. Respect. RESPECT. Boy, I couldn't be Retha. And I guess I'll just finish with responsibility. Responsibility to one another and our well-being and safety. So y'all take care. Peace, grace, and love to all. Thank you, Jennifer.